Our scriptures came down to us in several different fashions. This is the oldest piece that I have. This dates from about the time of Abraham, about 2600 BC. And it's a little cuneiform tablet. In this case, it's written right on the bottom what it is. It's a Babylonian clay tablet. It's a temple record of animals received in the form of taxes, purchase, or offering. In this case, it's a contract for 3 fat sheep that were used for sacrifice at Drenham near Nippur. It's from the Dynasty, so from Chaldees, so it dates from the time of Abraham. From that time on, there were many different means that were used to preserve scriptures. In the old days, there were the Demotic script. This is an example of that. It dates from about 400 BC to 30 BC, before Christ. And there's the Coptic script, which is from the 1st to the 4th century, approximately. And that's what that dates from. And then finally, later on, this is fragments from the book of Timotheus, from the Apocrypha. This dates from about 800 AD. So this is getting a little closer. And the Apocrypha is still part of the Catholic Bible, even though it's been taken out of some of the others. In front of us is a Torah. This dates from approximately 200 years ago, but of course the Torah goes back thousands of years. This one is on vellum, which is, they typically use calf skin for it. If the writing looks like it's upside down and backwards, that's the Hebrew writing. They write from the bottom of the page up and from the right to the left, just the opposite of what we do. I had a good Jewish friend. I said, well, you do it backwards. And he says, no, we were here first. So got a good point. Another example of how scriptures were preserved. This is from Burma, but this is a Bible written on palm leaves. And so each leaf is written on. And then later on, of course, when handwriting wasn't the only way to bring things to the fore, the printing press was invented. Now, printing was invented by the Chinese in about 700 AD, but the Chinese had fixed letters that were carved into wood, and it made it very difficult to make any changes or printing as we know it today. And it wasn't until Mr. Goldthwait, who changed his name from what meant goose feathers to Gutenberg, that in the 1400s in Germany that we invented movable metal types. Now Gutenberg, this is a page that he printed in his later term, about 1460. He printed, of course, the Bible in 1450 to 1455, and it was really a revolution in the world of learning, because before this time, the largest 2 libraries in Western Europe were actually both in England, at Cambridge and Oxford, to hold libraries. And they both had approximately 200 books each, but they're all handwritten books. And those were the largest in Europe. 200 years later, when the printing press was invented, and Gutenberg invented his ink, his type, and his paper, all 3. In fact, most people say that printing has never surpassed the quality of the first printer, Gutenberg, and never matched it. But from that time on until what was called incunabula, which stands for in the cradle of printing, from around 1450-55, when Gutenberg finished his work on the Bible, until and including the year 1500, there were approximately 30,000 different titles of books published. It was a revolution that changed the world, and people who normally would never have learned to read started to read, and the scriptures were handed down that way. And finally, a century or so later, in the English language, the Coverdale was the first Bible published in England. This is a page of the Coverdale. If you can't afford the book, you get a page. And this is a page of the first printing of the Coverdale, which came out in 1535. 85% of this translation was done by William Tyndale. Used some of Wycliffe's earlier writings, but Tyndale's, he was put to death by King Henry VIII because Henry, the last thing he wanted was anybody to be able to read the Bible, because like Tyndale found out in another little book I'll show later, there weren't actually 7 sacraments as the Catholic Church and then the Church of England expound. There were only 2, baptism and marriage. And that made for a lot cheaper life passages than what the king wanted. It was big business for the king. Tried to stop the printing of the Bible in English. And of course, Tyndale was executed.